Today on The Big Show, we're hanging out with Tim Wendel once again and continuing our discussion about his recent book, Down to the Last Pitch, how the 1991 Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves gave us the best World Series of all time. We'll talk a little Kirby Puckett and compare him to Joe Mauer. Also, I'll talk about how the current Twins are basically dead to me. And finally, what kind of reaction the book has gotten in Atlanta. Let's do it. Hey, it's your good friend, it's your pal, it's your compadre. It's TC, everybody. How you doing? What's going on the Big Show today? Well, of course, we are live without a net every Monday through Friday right here on The Big Show. And for me, it's all about having a laugh, making some new friends like Tim, and not being afraid to call the ridiculous in sports ridiculous. Because, you know, there's a lot of people out there, holy moly, as Harry Carey would say, holy cow. Exactly. Harry, we miss you, buddy boy. You need to come back, though. You'd have to learn the rules of the road these days because there's a lot of stuff that's not acceptable anymore because people are so darn uptight. No. That's not the juggernaut of love. Sportsnaut Unfiltered. No, not like that at all. Of course, you can find the show at sportsnaut.com. Our writers, make sure you swing on by our writers. Fantastic stuff there, man. It is just beautiful on a day-to-day basis. It is spectacular. That's sports as in sports and not as in you're the juggernaut, baby. You can follow me on Twitter if you like. It's HeyTC. That's hey as in, well, hey, H-E-Y. And then TC as in the Twin Cities. That's right. Finally, before we get to Tim, I want to say thanks for listening to The Big Show. If you're digging on it, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes. And then also, I'd appreciate it if you could tell a friend or a loved one about the show. Say, yeah, this TC guy, he's kind of a dorky kind of guy, but he's kind of growing on me, man. And he's kind of a fun guy, doesn't take himself too seriously. It's a good time listening to the show. And his guests, man, they are killer. Well, there you go. I'd appreciate that. And I thank you in advance. So what's going on in the Big Show today? Well, we're talking with Tim Wendel. We can follow him on Twitter at Tim_Wendel. The book is Down to the Last Pitch, how the 1991 Minnesota Twins and Atlanta Braves gave us the best World Series of all time. How was the book received in Atlanta? Have you gotten any sense how it's been received in Atlanta?
Pretty favorably. I mean, the problem with publishing, unlike maybe magazine covers, in a perfect world, we probably would have had a Braves cover on that, there too. But, we went with a striking photo of Kirby Puckett, and I've heard from some people going, it's difficult for me to buy something with Kirby Puckett on it, at least out of Atlanta. But I think it's similar to that, my previous book, Summer 68, Tigers Cardinals, and I remember going down and doing a speaking engagement in St. Louis, and they lost the series that year in 7. And my first word to them, and it's kind of what I'm kind of telling the Braves folks and Will when I go down there in a couple of weeks, it's time to do some healing. It's time to forgive and forget. And if anything, as I was just speaking about, the Braves kind of went on a mission after this. And I don't think, and Mark Lemke and I have discussed this, the guy who seems to have saved up all his big hits for the postseason. If he ever had hit this well in the regular season, he would have made major money. The infielder for the Braves, he kind of wonders if they go on the 13 more consecutive playoff appearances if they had won in 91. And he thinks not. And I tend to agree too. Certainly it's got to be agonizing to lose a series like that. I mean, I think it was John Sherholtz, the general manager for the Braves, said, maybe what we should have just done is got out a chainsaw and, just split the trophy down the middle. Well, sports doesn't work that way. There's a winner, and the Twins were deservedly the winner. But you could tell this stuck with the Braves because they were ready to make amends after that.
One of the things that at least some people I know have always said about Bobby Cox is that he was a good manager during the regular season, but not a very good postseason manager. And I can certainly relate to that now. Obviously, the Twins had Tom Kelly in 87, 91, and some tough years. And now I'm 4 years into Ron Gardenhire when Gardenhire should have been fired, in my humble opinion, in Minnesota because the guy is 3-19. The only team he's ever beaten in the 3-19 since beating Billy Beane's Moneyball team. And that's the only team he's ever beaten. And some could argue that was kind of a transition team between Tom Kelly and Ron Gardenhire, and I'm just, I mean, at this point, I still watch the Twins. I still like them, but in some ways, the Twins, who are my team, are dead to me right now because of the fact that they just have this blind loyalty to Ron Gardenhire. And can you talk about the kind of the sense on Bobby Cox, and if you have an opinion on Gardenhire, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think any manager that lasts a long period of time, and Cox falls into this, Kelly, in a way, falls into it. You get talking with them, and if they're really honest, and sometimes if you get to know them over the years, they'll kind of let down their guard a bit. They'll kind of say, yeah, you manage the regular season, and you're rolling the dice in the playoffs. And this isn't to justify in 1991 some of the very kind of curious decisions I think Cox made. I mean, he potentially took out Steve Avery in what I want to say game 4, I think, too early. He probably did the same thing with John Smoltz in game 7 too early. He was managing it almost like a regular season game as opposed to, okay, let's put all the chips on the table and we're going for it, you know? And I think it's tough to break that habit. It's easier just not to be criticized in a way. And if anything, it's funny, we've gone, in 91, you had, I believe it was 14 managers fired. It's still the record. If anything, we've kind of gone back, and I remember talking with Joe Torre about this, and Joe Torre was managing the Cardinals back in this era, and he said you could start to see the sea change. It was almost like, you better do your job, or we're going to bounce you. And if anything, the Braves and the Twins, both going from worst to first in 91, made it more pressurized for managers and even front office guys. You know, gosh, look at those two teams. They were in last place last year. Now they're in the World Series. What have you done for me lately? And it's easier to show somebody the door. I think TC has kind of slid back now a little bit, where we now have institutional memory, and maybe it's easier to keep somebody, in a spot. We had some firings at the end of last year, but I'm still kind of stunned the way the money has gone, the way you have more corporate ownership, that's still the record for the number of firings, managerial firings in a season, still back in 91. I thought for some reason we'd break that simply because that's the world we're living. It's like, do the job right now or I'll find somebody else.
What are your thoughts on Gardenhire? Do you think he should have been gone after last year? Or?
I like him, but the thing is, I think, and I like him because, he gave me time for the book, and he's a great storyteller. I mean, he's the third base coach when Puckett hits the homer in Game 6, and is pretty much one of the first to realize it in the ballpark. It's going to carry out because he had a much better vantage point. I mean, I love it that he's watching the outfielders for the Braves. He's watching the crowd. He's seeing the ball, and he's almost immediately saying it's out. Whereas Chili Davis is down in the on-deck circle kind of squinting and going, well, I don't know, maybe, could be, maybe off the wall, and he can't tell. It's funny, I can hear what you're saying about the Twins because, I was just up there, and anytime I'm up, I try to catch a couple games, but I don't know, they leave me scratching my head a little bit, and you realize how fortunate they were with some of the guys, having Morris for a year, having a guy like Herbeck around, but maybe most importantly, and several players from the 91 team told me this, they said, Tom Kelly was extremely fortunate, and I think he was, in the fact that your best player in Kirby Puckett always hustled. He always ran out ground balls. He always did everything. So that then set the tone. It wasn't like where the manager had to suddenly start finding people or talking to people if they weren't running out ground balls or weren't chasing down things in the gap in the outfield, etc. And when you have somebody like that as kind of the leader of your team, it makes it much easier, I would think, to manage. Real quick, Rick Aguilera told me a story that just kind of summed up the Twins team in '91 in a way, in Puckett. And Aguilera was traded from the Mets, came over, so this was a couple years previously. He caught up with the team in New York. They were playing the Yankees, and showed up mid-game. Showed up, got into his uniform, walked down, they're at the old Yankee Stadium, down the stairs, and now there you are in the dugout, and there's this couple steps up, which was kind of bizarre. And Puckett was up at bat, and Puckett grounded out, and with men on base, and ran hard up to first base, and is coming back to the dugout, and he's really mad at himself. Like, he's swearing and going, I can't believe it. Oh, I didn't do this. He didn't throw a helmet or anything, but he was pretty upset. And he looks up and sees Aguilera, the new guy on the team. And immediately he smiles. He comes right down into the dugout where Aguilera's still standing there. He hasn't even sat down on the bench yet or anything. Nobody else really notices he's there. And he gives him a big hug, and he says, Aggie, welcome to the Twins. You're going to love being here. And then some Aguilera says, how can you beat that? First of all, the guy knew who I was. Secondly, he's able to turn it around on a dime and just welcome me to the team. And he said what many other people said, right, about Puckett. I was ready to run through a wall for the guy, and I've been on the team maybe 3 minutes. And so that kind of summed up Puckett, and certainly that makes, Kelly, whoever's, whatever manager, when you have players like that, a lot easier.
Yeah. No, it's a great story on Puck. One of the things, Joe Mauer, everybody likes Joe Mauer up here, but he's clearly not Kirby Puckett. He's not, and the current Twins team was built around Joe Mauer, and now it's been kind of taken apart by Mauer. I guess my biggest beef with Gardenhire, I know he's a good guy. I know he's a very likable guy, but my biggest beef is that he's had his shot, and it's time to move on to somebody else. And then, the fact that a lot of other players leave the team and do very well, say the Carlos Gomez's of the world, and a lot of other guys tend to leave the team these days, and Gardenhire's got this affinity for kind of piss poor, as I'd call it, middle infielders, who are, maybe not the best, because that's what Gardy was. So he has a soft spot in his heart there, and it just, I don't know, it just doesn't work. Hey, one of the things that you touched on is obviously the Twins and the Braves. Last question, and I appreciate the time. Is they were both worst to first, and the great thing about baseball is that I love to point out ESPN, the so-called experts in 2013, had 4 out of the 43 pick the Red Sox to make the playoffs. And there's always a surprise team in Major League Baseball. Usually there's a couple in each league, and then usually there's a couple disappointing teams in each league, if not every division, one in every division. And I'm just curious, in 2014, you got a couple of sleeper teams that could surprise. Obviously, the Brewers off to a hot start this year.
Yeah, Brewers off to a great start. Even though I'm skeptical on the Brewers, I don't know, maybe that doesn't last. I mean, so much of this kind of depends a little bit what division you're in. And I might just have caught them. I was watching them last night. I may have just caught them on a good night. But, I don't know, Seattle looks kind of interesting. And, this was supposedly, especially, with Oakland and the Angels and, being in that division, the Seattle wasn't going to get a sniff. And, I don't know, maybe closer to home. I mean, I'm kind of here in the D.C. area, and I've always liked Buck Showalter. And, it's funny, we're talking managers, and that's a guy who can get, blood out of stones, so to speak. I mean, he gets a lot of out of the team. I mean, they got some huge question marks, and I wouldn't want to be managing a team in the AL East, even though I don't think the Red Sox are going to be all that great this year. Tampa Bay's maybe the team to beat, maybe the Yankees, but I like Buck, and he gets a lot out of it, and he also doesn't take himself too seriously. When I first got to know Buck Showalter years ago, he would tell this great story. He just moved into some, subdivision in Florida. He bought a house in Florida, and he would go out and walk around, and they'd been in the house maybe only a couple weeks, and every time he was kind of walking on the sidewalk, people would just kind of go over to the other side. I mean, nobody really wanted to, chat with him or come up against him. And he was managing the Yankees, and he just had taken over the Yankees, and he was putting in a lot of midnight oil, staying up late, and all this stuff. And so kind of the walks were kind of a relaxing thing for him at midday. And finally, one day, he's walking along, and he comes up to this older guy, and the older guy doesn't see too well, and he just kind of, bumbling along and is looking down at the pavement, and all of a sudden, right in front of him is Buck Showalter. And the old guy kind of steps back, and he's like a little scared. And Buck kind of goes, "Hey, I'm new in the neighborhood." And the guy goes, "Yeah, we know." And he goes, "I'm Buck Showalter, and I'm the new manager of the Yankees, and I'm down here, and then I'll be heading off with the team soon, blah blah blah." And the guy suddenly has got this relieved look on his face, and he goes, "Oh, that's good to hear." And Buck goes, "Yeah, okay, well, why?" And the guy just going, "Well, the lights are on in your house all the time. You're keeping weird hours. We all thought you were a drug dealer." And Buck loves telling that story, and it's just kind of the way he kind of fits in, and so maybe he gets enough out of the Orioles for them to get back in, but maybe not.
My out on a limb pick is the Miami Marlins. I'm going Jose Fernandez Cy Young, Jose Fernandez MVP.
You are a brave man.
Yeah,
I was watching them a little bit last night too. Now, do you think TC does that new ballpark?
Oh God,
does that help them in any way? I don't think so.
It is so hideous. That thing is just horrible. I know a guy who was just a guy I know lives, I think, down in Boca, and he was just complaining that they were moving downtown. And he's like, all of the people in whatever West Palm and Boca areas, they're not going to be going to they're not going to go to the games anymore. And it was just a stupid decision. So,
well, you guys got a great ballpark up there, even though I kind of miss, I don't know, the Metrodome. Players of both teams in '91. I was doing down the last picture. We said that was the ultimate home field advantage, the old Metrodome, and the loud and the Teflon roof and the baggy and the plexiglass, and the Twins played well there. I mean, they really used that edge. And boy, you get Terry Pendleton and some of the old Braves talking about the Metrodome. Oh boy.
The book is Down to the Last Pitch: How the 1991 Minnesota Twins and Atlanta Braves Gave Us the Best World Series of All Time. You can find Tim on his website at timwendel.com for more information about the book and his other 10 books, including Summer of '68, the season when baseball in America changed forever. You are the best, buddy boy, and I appreciate the time.
My pleasure, TC. Enjoyed it.
All right, let's wrap it up. Of course, you can find the show on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe. In Stitcher, and then also it's available in the app called Swell. I kid you not. It's called Swell. Very nice. Going back to, what was it, Tim's other book, the Summer of '68, with Bob Gibson, Denny McClain. I think that was their summer. But I think this would have been too late, though, for Swell, because when I think of Swell, I think of Leave It to Beaver. And I think Leave It to Beaver was on from 57 to 63. How do I know that? I'm chock full of useless material like that. So, and it's also called Wikipedia, which again is chock full of useless material. Though I got to give a shout out. we used Unbelievable by EMF because that was a number one song in the summer of 91. And I figure if we're talking about the Braves and the Twins in 91, man, I got to use a little EMF, Unbelievable. And that ties back to the previous show we did with Tim, which was, what was that? We did, Good Vibrations by Mark Wahlberg. Say hello to your mother from me. Mark Wahlberg and the Funky Bunch. I had my choice to use a Prince song because Cream, if you remember that, Cream, Get on Top. But Prince, I don't know, he's just he's kind of litigious, man. And I don't know, I love Prince, man. I've never been over to Paisley Park here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul. But I know he's done some private stuff there, and I'd love to get into Paisley Park at one point in my life. I think that would be pretty cool to check out Paisley Park. But, yeah, Prince, I love him, man, but I don't think I'd touch any of his music because he's suing everybody. What he must pay in retainers could, make a lot of people squirm. But a lot of people, what Prince pays in retainers each year is probably what most people earn in a lifetime at this point. But I'm probably in trouble now. Come on, Prince. I love you, man. You're the greatest. It's just one of those things. So there you go. But make sure you pick up you download from iTunes EMF's Unbelievable. Love that song. It's fantastic. And then Marky Mark. Well, I don't love that song, but hey, it's a classic song. I was looking for a rock song from the summer or the all year of 1991, a rock song that had hit number one. But by that time, rock was kind of stagnating, and I guess Nirvana had just come out and was kind of blowing up the 80s rock scene. And it was the only thing I could find was More Than Words by Extreme. And I'm like, oh, that song is just too boring, man. Got to get a little EMF instead of Extreme. And that's sad. When me as a rock guy, I'm choosing a little EMF over Extreme. Now, if it was Decadent Dance or Get the Funk Out or Mama Don't Want to Go to School Today, whatever that song is, boom, I'm on board. Gary Cherone, Nuno Betancourt, the drummer and the bassist, which, well, she'll ever be unknown to me. Boom, I'm all on board there. So there you go. Great time talking to Tim. Of course, the book is Down to the Last Pitch, how the 1991 Minnesota Twins, Minnesota's last world championship. Of course, the WNBA, Minnesota Lynx, I think have won a couple, but come on. I've never watched a Lynx game. All due respect to them. Hey, congratulations to the ladies. I'm sure they're spectacular, but it's just not my cup of tea. And I'm not really a basketball guy. I'm more football and baseball. I love me some basketball, but not as much as football and baseball. So make sure you pick up Tim's brand new book out on Amazon and wherever wonderful and sexy books are sold. You can find it. And then, of course, Tim's got 11 other books that you can look up on Amazon, including The Summer of '68, the season where baseball in America changed forever. I think that was Bob Gibson's, as I was mentioning, 1.12 ERA. That is just sexy, in my humble opinion. There's nothing better than that. You can follow Tim on Twitter, Tim_Wendel, WENDEL. And then the website is timwendel.com. There you go. I think we're all done. Hey, by the way, today is my birthday. So if you ever wanted to send me a birthday wish on Twitter to Hey TC on Twitter or TC at sportsnaut.com, you can do it today. You know what's gonna make you? It's gonna make you a wonderful, beautiful, spectacular human being if you do that, because you will forever be wonderful, in my humble opinion. I'm a simple guy. I don't need gifts or anything. I just maybe need a brownie or two. That'd be nice. And maybe a nice Italian dinner. That would be pretty fun as well. And then finally, a happy birthday wish. That's all I ever want. It's just, I like to wish people happy birthday. Hey, and I like to be wished happy birthday. And if you're one of these guys with a broomstick up your tuchus, well, then screw you, man. I don't want you listening, and I don't want you wishing me a happy birthday. Exactly. Well, I'd rather hang out with someone like you who I know is cool and who I know gets it. Right? Right. All right, let's crank a little more. Let's crank a little more EMF as we get out of here today. Big show in the book. What is it? I forget what it is. It's, well, it doesn't really matter. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of meandering today. It's my birthday, man. I'm no longer Reggie Jackson. I don't know what the next number is after Reggie Jackson. I have to figure out who I am now that, my identity of not being Reggie Jackson anymore is going to be tough enough to deal with. So there you go. All right, big show in the book. Have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the emergency room.
You say you're unbelievable.